So James and I said that we would talk about this AgLand project that we keep on mentioning, but nobody seems to know anything about apart from us who's working on it. But rather than start with AgLand, I'm going to actually go back a step and start with the ASSIST project, which is another joint CEH-Rothamsted project, also involving the British Geological Survey, which kind of motivates where AgLand came from, I guess. ASSIST is, say, a 5-year project, or sort of 5-year project. It's confusing because CEH started a year before Rothamsted on the project, but we all both have 5 years funding for it, so it's sort of 5 years plus. But the aim of the project was really to look at farming systems and look both to improve the production of those farming systems, but also the resilience of those farming systems. So really trying to look at how we produce a more sustainable farming system. CEH referred to it as a national capability. Rothamsted referred to it as an institute strategic program, which is our basic form of funding. But the idea, is to bring the sort of complementary expertise from CEH on an environmental basis and Rothamsted on a kind of farming agricultural basis together to try and address this problem. It's a mixture of some experiments, which I'll show you in a minute, and quite a lot of modelling work that goes on that is being developed as well across the two sites, across the two organisations. A series of work packages, just to sort of describe a little bit about those. So the first one is looking at the biophysical limitations on crop productivity. So that's taking information, for example, from the LCM plus crops map that CEH have developed, and trying to relate information on crops to productivity, to limits, constraints on the production in various different ways. Really essentially looking at trying to understand something about the yield gap, so the yields that we could potentially achieve from a given field, and what we actually do achieve because of losses due to problems with water and nutrient supply, with impact of pests, weeds and diseases on the productivity, and so on. So various different aspects. Sorry, these aren't my slides, so I have no idea how much animation there's going to be on them. It's a surprise to me as much as it is to you. But you know, trying to understand what things are limiting the yield, and therefore hopefully that we can understand how we might be able to reduce those limitations and produce an increased productivity. So within work package 1, we're doing, as well as some modelling work, we're also doing some work across a farm network. So we've identified 20 farms across the country in 4 different regions with different landscapes, different environments. Within each of those farms, we've selected 2 wheat fields, one that the farmer says is a good field and one that the farmer says is a poor field. And really trying to understand what the difference is between those fields within that environment. So we're using some sensing machinery to get various bits of information on a very detailed scale within each of the fields. That allows us to build some models and try to understand the potential yield against the actual yield that is achieved, and define those yield gaps. So the second work package is more focused on environmental impact, and again is predominantly model based, so extending the LTLS model, long-term large-scale interactions of CN and P, and trying to understand the impact of different agricultural management practices on soil carbon and greenhouse gas fluxes within the systems, but also starting to look at the impact of pollination pest control on the agri-ecosystems as well. And so one way that we're thinking about that within the project is trying to minimize the ecosystem disservices. So the things that, if you like, I guess the system is producing that we don't want it to, in various different ways. The third work package is a more experimental package. So it's actually trying to identify and develop sustainable solutions. So actually testing some ideas in field practice, ideally at a field scale, at a farm scale, rather than at a small experimental plot scale. And we have two experiments associated with that. One which is focused on arable crops. So we have, I think, 60, I can't remember how many sites we've got for this now. Somewhere in the region of 16 to 20 anyway, that we've established across the country. On each of those sites we have 3 fields with 3 different treatments being looked at on a field scale. So a simple, I guess, sort of business as usual type treatment where there's no kind of enhancement to the system at all. A second treatment where we have margins added to the field to bring natural enemies and so on into the field. And then a kind of a further enhancement where we have wildflower strips across the middle of the fields to actually aid the biological control organisms into the crop to try and improve that. So say that's running on a number of sites. I think we're into the second year of those, something like that. Yes, must be the second year of these. And of course, one of the challenges with this is we've got each site is a single replicate, and we've got variation in various other environmental factors between sites, which is an interesting challenge as to how we actually get the best information from that. We also have a grassland experiment. This is on a slightly smaller scale. It's our site in Devon. This is a well-established set of what's the right word? Independently drained plots. So each of these 14 plots that you can see here have separate drainage, so we can actually collect information about the runoff from each of those plots, so nutrients and various other things that come through those plots. On that structure, we then impose this combination of treatments. So we have 2 different grazing strategies, 2 different. We have both. I said they're drained, undrained and drained plots. So the drained plots have extra drainage mechanisms within them to improve the drainage of those. And then we look at 3 different types of swards within that. So this is using sheep to graze the plots. And so we're interested in both what's going on within the plots in terms of the grassland and the grassland structure, but we're also measuring productivity in terms of the animals within those experiments. Oh, okay. The different swards are allocated to the plots. Okay. I should have known that. I did the randomization. So the 4th work package is then another modeling package, developing a framework which uses a lot of the information that sort of comes from the other packages, and is starting to look at farm management practices, the impact of different farm management practices on the performance. And then there's a 5th package, which I think is the package that James is involved with. You're on 4. I can never remember who's involved with which. Which is sort of a more agroinformatics tools, a data-driven work package, really trying to bring together lots of different sources of information. And I think I'm right, I've got the slides in the right order, that one of the first outputs that we've got from this project is a thing called ASSET, which is the Assist Scenario Exploration tool. And this is basically bringing together lots of the sources of information that we've talked about to enable us to explore the impact of different decisions, so different ideas about intensification of the systems, intensity of management. We can look at different kinds of information in terms of the output, and really explore the impact of different decisions on the performance of the landscape, on the performance of our farms. So that's a very, very quick exploration of what Assist is about. You can see the website address there. If anybody's interested in anything more, James and I can certainly point you in the direction of the people who know more than we do about the bits that we don't know very much about. Say that's basically stimulated to some extent. Oops, wrong thing. Agland, and I'll pass over to sorry, go on.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So when you model things like potential yield, is that done by statistical modeling, process-based modeling? How is that done?
It's a mixture of different things. I'm not directly involved in that bit of the work at the moment, but I can certainly, I guess John.
Yeah, I think it's based mostly statistically on what the maximum yield in well-managed fields is known to be. So it's a bit of a slight guesswork, because if you don't know what constraints are, you're not quite sure what the maximum yield is.
But you stay very close to the data, that's not
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's mostly, because there are the sort of weak yield models, but they, I think they're almost.
So we have so in terms of, I forgot to mention, so work package one of the outputs from that is gathering information about the spatial variation in fields, and then that's being used as an input into a process-based model called Sirius that has been developed by one of my colleagues, Misha Semenov at Rothamsted, which is, enables us to explore all sorts of interesting things about yield and varietal variation and so on. It's predominantly being used to explore the development of idiotypes, so the best kind of combination of traits of a wheat variety and how that then interacts with the environment.
Just picking up on that, Sirius is one of many, many wheat models.
Yep.
And where some of the wheat model into comparisons that I've seen show that there is huge model structural uncertainty in wheat yield models. They don't even necessarily respond in the same direction to temperature and precipitation changes. So I was just wondering, given that wheat and yield gaps are fundamental to what you've been describing, are you using alternative models or just relying on Sirius?
I know that Misha interacts with the broader wheat modelling community. In terms of Assist, I can't give you an answer because I don't know. I'm not directly involved in that bit of the work. But I would be surprised if it was just being looked at with just Sirius as a tool.
I guess that's why the yield gap stuff is the more statistical approach, data driven.
Yeah.
Of course, there are many other crops as well where you don't have really any or many yield models. So yeah, I agree. I think these wheat models are many and varied, almost as bad as bloody climate models, with different, even more varied answers in the climate model.
Yeah. Wheat is probably one of the easier ones because you probably know what potential yield is, because I think the UK holds the world record for wheat yield.
About 18 tonnes per hectare, yeah.
Whereas for a lot of other crops, God knows what it is.
Actually, no, New Zealand hold it now, I think. But yeah.
We got the World Cup in cricket.
But the problem with that world record is, that I guess is that is putting everything in the right place at the right time, and so there's still some uncertainty associated with that measurement, I guess, as well.
And I think that's the problem with the yield gap idea. If you base it on these models, it's almost an unattainable yield based on that sort of thing. So something more based on what you see in reality is more sensible, because we don't really understand the full constraints even for wheat.
And that's a lot of what the sensor data that has been collected from those work package 1 fields is about, is actually trying to sort of ground that assessment a little bit further. So. Okay.
So on to Agland now.